Howdy heck and hey, it's been a lukewarm minute. How are you guys? Good? I'm great. Let's get on to the video. So today I wanted to talk about something that I personally haven't experienced, but I've seen other people experience a couple of times, like my animation professor, one of my close friends. It's something really common in the art community that I just thought I wanted to discuss. Also, I'm sorry if I sound really hoarse or scratchy or anything like that. This is actually the second video I'm recording in the same day. I just want to pump out as many videos as I can in the same day so that I have a backlog that I can work on and actually stick to my goal of uploading more this year. So the topic that I actually wanted to discuss today is jealousy in the art community, also known as artist envy. Again, it's not something I've gone through, but I've seen quite a few people go through it and I have certain opinions on it. The most common time I see artist envy take place is when one of my artist friends finds another artist who is significantly younger than them, but has a way more advanced skill level. They may talk to other people and joke about how this person is godly and how they want to steal that person's hands, or that person shouldn't be allowed to draw art. And I've actually heard some people say that artists who are younger with greater skill than them shouldn't be allowed to live, which I know they're saying it as a joke, but the fact that it comes from a legitimate place of jealousy, resentment, and envy is mildly concerning to me, to be honest. Everybody grows and develops at a different pace, and so just because someone's significantly younger than you, maybe like 5, possibly even 10 years younger than you, has a much more developed style than you, isn't a reflection on you, and it isn't a reflection of them either. They just so happen to be a faster learner. And I find it really, really upsetting when the older, less skilled artist has to go and say things like, oh, I want to steal their hands, or be really aggressive and mean towards the younger artist. It just doesn't make any sense to me. You should be rooting on the younger artist for pursuing their dreams and getting to that point as quickly as they did. And even though you might not want to admit it just because of how young they are, there's probably a lot of things that you could learn from them. That's not to say that they're not done learning. Everybody grows and expands as they move forward, but you shouldn't resent a younger artist with a greater skill for any reason whatsoever. It's not a reflection of you as a person, and it's not a reflection of them as a person. Just let them do what they want to do and cheer them on and make them strive to do even better than they currently are. Another really common time I see resentment within the art community is when you find an artist that has a much, much bigger following than you do, and the art style is either really similar or they don't seem to be posting much, if anything, on the regular. Basically just seeing someone doing what you're doing, but doing it successfully, so to speak. Now, I haven't actually physically seen this one nearly as often as I do the younger artist situation, but it's the same thing. You shouldn't resent them for any reason whatsoever. They just so happen to know what they're doing, or they happened to post the right thing at the right time to gain that audience. You know, like, gaining a following is almost entirely luck-based, and just because they managed to do it and you haven't, doesn't mean that they're a bad person and they don't deserve any of the hatred or disrespect that they get. I can understand the frustration of seeing someone do exactly what you're doing, but essentially doing it better, so to speak, and gaining that following and being able to sell merch and being able to do collabs and get sponsors and all kinds of stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is, they are not responsible for you not having a big following. There's probably no connection between you and that person at all, so what's the point in resenting them for being able to figure it out and do what they're doing so well if it's not related to you whatsoever? I don't know, it's just hating a person for having such a big following and being able to crack the code, so to speak, is really stupid. Like, you shouldn't hate that specific person because they happened to get lucky and get the fame and be able to do this for a living. This next one kind of ties in more with the first one, and that's self-stagnation causing resentment. And what I mean by that is, you look at all of your art over the past, like, say, year or so. You look over all of your art for the past year, and you don't see too much growth, you don't see too much development in the style, you're still drawing the same poses, the same angles, everything looks the same. And looking at your work over the year and seeing that everything is the same can make you feel like you've stopped growing and you've stopped developing. And that can cause two kinds of resentment. It can cause the self-resentment, which is like, why am I not growing? Why am I not developing? Is there something wrong with me? I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not good enough at this, stuff like that. And it can cause resentment with other artists that you see, where you can go through all their old posts and you can see all of the development that they've done, or you're just looking at their current style and how developed and fully formed it is, or maybe you really like the way that they've learned to color and you're just looking at their improvement, or you're looking at their final results, and that causes resentment towards them because you're not getting that result. I feel like I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's not that artist's fault that you feel the self-stagnation. And really, self-stagnation is a very serious thing. If you look at my redraw that I do every single year, it may or may not be up on Instagram by the time I upload this video. It should be though. If you look at my yearly redraw, you'll see that the difference between the start of 2019 and the start of 2020 isn't very apparent. Like, the still majority of the elements of that drawing look the same. And that was partially frustrating for me because I had personally felt like I had done a lot of growth and development in the year. Not drastic, but subtle things, like I would puff out the hair more, the faces are ever so slightly more pointed, I put way more exaggeration in the eyes, my anatomy got a tiny bit better. But all of those elements aren't apparent in the 2020 redraw that I did. And so, yeah, I felt like I had stagnated and I had felt a slight sort of resentment towards myself for not being able to grow and develop as much as I thought I did within the year. But then I realized that the redraw itself probably wasn't the best way to show my growth and my development, at least not that specific redraw. So what I ended up doing is I went back to an old style frame for Forget-Me-Not that I was working on months ago, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, and I managed to find that old file and I compared it to the new file of the exact same style frame that I decided to redraw because the formatting was wrong. And right there you can see the improvement. You can see that the hair is puffed out a lot more. You can see that there's way more expression in the eyes. You can see that the face is slightly more pointed now. So I think when it comes to self-stagnation, you need to think about how you felt like you improved. For me, it was the hair, the eyes, and the pointiness of the face. And you need to find pieces that you've done that highlight how you feel like you've grown and you've developed. Because like I said, 2020 redraw, none of that is visible. But when you look at this style frame redraw that I did, all of a sudden it's way more apparent that yes, I did grow and I did develop as an artist. And so I think that's the key to healing the resentment that self-stagnation causes. It's not to go out and look at other artists and see how well they're doing and hate them for what they're doing, because they're not doing anything wrong. They're just minding their own business, drawing what they want to draw and developing their own style the way they feel they want to. The key is to look at your own work and see how you've improved and build up upon that. Now, this last point doesn't directly tie into artist envy, but I feel like it's a key factor of artist envy and why when we find someone with much greater skill or a much bigger following, we tend to resort to hating them as a person and not just accepting the fact that they are more advanced or they are further along in their art journey than you. And that's the fact that a lot of artists tend to tie their self-worth to the quality of work they do or how many likes and reposts and retweets or whatever that their art gets. It's a very slippery slope to fall into, and I will admit I myself had fallen into it for a very brief time. When I had first started university, I was finally meeting other artist friends and other animator friends, and I had never had that before. And while I was still top of the class in my first animation course, it was very, very competitive for me, and it wasn't a fun type of competitive. It was my mindset was, if I'm not the best animator in the room, or if I'm not the best character designer in the room, then who am I? You know? And it was really stressful, and it was a really, really hard time for me because I tied how good of a person I was to how good the quality of my work was. And while I was pumping out work that I was proud of and I felt really, really good about, in the back of my mind there was always that fear that there was going to be someone better than me that showed up, and then that would degrade who I was as a person. Since then, I've grown and developed and changed as a person, and I've come to realize that who I am as a person isn't connected to the work that I produce whatsoever. Like, if one of my pieces doesn't get a decent grade, or it's not something that I'm necessarily proud of, or it doesn't get a lot of likes on Instagram, or whatever the fuck I'm doing. It's not directly tied to my worth and who I am as a person. And I know that's a really, really hard thing to come out of, but once you get out of that, I feel like you're going to notice you don't resent people nearly as much as you used to, and you actually want to see how they grow and develop and change, and you want to follow their artistic journey. And rather than being jealous and angry and looking down on them, you actually look up to them and you inspire to be something like them. For example, I really, really look up to Kitty Dog. As far as I know, Kitty Dog is only 15 or 16, and I'm turning 20 this year. I don't resent her because her animation is more fluid than mine and she's younger. I don't resent her because she has a bigger following. And because I know my self-worth isn't tied to my work, I really look up to her, and she is an inspiration for me, and I love looking at her animations and seeing how she grows and develops as a person. There are, of course, way more examples than that, but I thought I would use Kitty Dog because she's younger than me and she has a much bigger following than me, and she's always constantly growing and changing her style, so I thought it was appropriate to use her as an example since she ties in with pretty much everything I've been saying in this video. Essentially, what I'm trying to say in this video is that you really have no reason whatsoever to be envious or jealous of other artists, even if they're younger or they have a bigger following, or you feel like they're growing and changing and you're not. It's never that other artist's fault unless they're like directly bullying you or something, but that's something completely different. If you're just looking at them through a window, like you're on the outside looking in, then they're not correlated to anything going on in your life or your art career. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that and realize that this resentment and this envy is literally for nothing. Like, you could be spending that time developing your art style or drawing something you're really passionate about or working on your long-term project like I do, and instead you're sitting here being envious of another person. I don't know, none of it makes sense to me. I just wanted to ramble about it for a little bit, which is exactly what I've done, so I think I'm going to end the video here. I don't really have much else to say on this topic. If you have your own opinion or you want to hear more about what I have to say about this topic, leave a comment or something. I'll read every comment that I get. If you sneezed in this video at all, bless you, and I'll see you later.